The sun burned bright in the sky, casting a fierce light over the barren land. The ground was cracked and dry, like the skin of a creature starved of water. The air shimmered with heat, and the wind carried only dust. There was nothing left here, just the endless stretch of a desert world that had once been full of life. Now fading away, the people who lived here had long known the weight of thirst. It was a constant companion, one they could never escape. Water had become a rare treasure, more precious than gold. The wells had dried up years ago, and the rivers were nothing more than cracked earth, full of stories but no life. Among the few who still lived on this parched planet was a young alien woman. Her skin, a pale shade of greenish blue, had taken on a tired, almost translucent hue from the endless days under the hot sun. Her sharp, angular features were covered in dust, and her once bright eyes now looked dull and empty. She moved slowly across the wasteland, her feet dragging in the dry sand. She had been walking for what felt like days, maybe even longer, searching for something, anything that could save her people. But all she found was endless heat and silence. Her village had been one of the last to hold on, clinging to life as best as they could. But even they could not survive much longer. The alien woman knew this. Her people had traded everything they could to survive, but now they were running out of options. They had no more food, no more shelter, and worst of all, no more water. Desperation had driven her out into the wasteland. She knew the humans were coming. She had heard rumors from the few traders who still passed through the area. They said the humans had ships, big, shiny ships that could carry things like water and food, things that her people needed. They said the humans might help. And so, the alien woman had made up her mind? She would find them, no matter what it took. As she walked, her thoughts wandered back to her village. Her family had tried to hold out, hoping that someone would come to save them, but time was running out. The people had grown thin, their faces hollow and pale from lack of food and water. The younger ones were already too weak to walk on their own. She had seen it in their eyes, the same look she had when she first started searching. The look of hopelessness, but she refused to give up. She could not let her people die without a fight. She glanced up at the horizon. A small speck in the distance caught her attention. She blinked and squinted her eyes, trying to make out what it looked like a ship, a human ship, perhaps. Her heart skipped a beat. She had found them. She began to walk faster, the last of her strength pushing her forward. Her legs were sore, her feet cracked and blistered from the rough terrain. But she couldn't stop now. She had to reach them. The ship grew larger as she moved closer. It wasn't just any ship. It was massive, unlike anything her people had ever seen. It gleamed in the sunlight, the metal reflecting off the sand like a mirror. The alien woman could see a small group of humans standing near the landing gear, preparing to unload. A wave of excitement mixed with fear washed over her. She had never been this close to humans before. She didn't know how they would react to her, or if they would even be willing to help. But she had to try. She had no other choice. Her mind raced as she approached the ship. She thought of her people, starving and thirsty. She thought of the desperate bargains they had made in the past, trading away precious resources just to stay alive for a little longer. But nothing had worked. Now she was standing in front of a chance and opportunity for her people to survive. When she was only a few meters away from the ship, she collapsed to her knees, overwhelmed with exhaustion. Her breath came in short, painful gasps as she tried to steady herself. The humans who had been unloading the ship turned at the sound of her fall. They looked at her with curiosity, confusion, and concern. One of the humans, a man in a dark blue uniform, stepped forward. He stopped a few feet away from her, his eyes studying her closely. The alien woman looked up at him with tired eyes, her voice barely a whisper. "Please, water," she begged, her throat raw from the lack of moisture. The human man crouched down, his eyes softening as he took in her condition. He could see the dust on her skin, the way she trembled in the heat. And he could see the desperation in her eyes, the same desperation he had seen in so many others during his time with the expedition. But this time there was something different. There was something in the way she looked at him, as if she was willing to trade anything for a single drop of water. Her words barely reached him, but he understood. He could see the thinness of her body, the way her skin had lost its natural color. It wasn't just thirst, her whole life had been reduced to the need for water. Without a word, he reached into his pack and pulled out a small flask. He unscrewed the cap and offered it to her. The alien woman hesitated for a moment, then reached for it with shaking hands. She took a small sip, her eyes closing as the cool liquid slid down her throat. She drank it slowly, savoring every drop. She looked up at him, surprise and gratitude filling her gaze. "Why?" she asked softly, her voice still hoarse. The human man simply smiled. "It's just water. There's no need for you to trade anything." The alien woman slowly finished drinking the water, feeling the coolness spread through her parched throat. For the first time in days, she felt a sense of relief. The human watched her with quiet interest, noticing how she drank with a hunger that went beyond thirst. It was as if the water wasn't just quenching her body, but also something deeper inside her, something that had been starved for far too long. As she finished, she handed the flask back to him, her hands shaking slightly. She looked at the human, the words catching in her throat. She had been ready to offer anything in return for the water, but he hadn't asked for anything. No trade, no promises, just a simple act of kindness. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice still raspy. Her words didn't feel like enough to express her gratitude, but it was all she could offer. The human nodded, his expression softening as he took the flask back. "You don't need to thank me. It's just water," he said, his voice calm. "But are you all right? You look like you've been out here a long time." The alien woman nodded slowly, her eyes shifting to the vast, empty landscape around them. She didn't want to admit the truth that she had been walking for days, maybe longer, and had no idea if her people were still alive or if there was even hope left. But she couldn't bring herself to lie either. I'm not sure," she replied quietly. "I was searching something. For water, for help." The human looked at her with understanding. He could see the weariness in her face, the desperation hidden beneath the surface. He had seen it before, in the eyes of people who had lost everything and were willing to do anything to survive. "Why were you out here alone?" he asked gently. "Where's your village? Where are the others?" The alien woman hesitated for a moment, her eyes flickering to the ground. She had never been one to share such things with strangers, but something about this human made her feel safe. Maybe it was the kindness in his eyes, or maybe it was the fact that he hadn't asked for anything in return. She slowly began to speak, her voice barely above a whisper. "My village. We were one of the last to survive," she said, her words slow and heavy with sorrow. "But the wells ran dry and the rivers stopped flowing. The young ones, they don't have the strength to walk anymore. Some have already died. We have nothing left." The human listened in silence, his expression serious. He knew that he couldn't understand the full weight of her words, but he could see the pain in her eyes. The suffering of her people was real, and it was clear that they were running out of time. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. "I didn't know." The alien woman gave a small shake of her head. "You couldn't have known," she replied softly. "No one knows. Not unless they've lived through it." There was a long pause between them, the weight of the silence hanging in the air. The human glanced at the rest of the crew, who were still unloading the ship, then back at her. He thought about their mission, delivering aid to planets like this one, bringing food, water, and supplies to those in need. But even with all their resources, they couldn't save everyone. And here was this woman, asking for help, offering nothing in return, and he felt the full responsibility of his actions settling on his shoulders. He didn't have the answers, but he did know one thing. He couldn't just leave her out here. "We can help," he said firmly, "not just with water. We've got supplies, food, and a way off this planet if you need it. If you want to come with us, we can take you to a place where you'll be safe." The alien woman looked up at him, her eyes wide with disbelief. "You would help me?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly. "After everything I've lost?" The human nodded without hesitation. It's not just about what you've lost. It's about what we can do to help you and your people now. You don't have to go through this alone. She stared at him for a long moment, her heart pounding in her chest. She had heard stories of humans being kind, but she had never seen it firsthand. She had always thought of humans as strange, distant beings who only cared about themselves. But here, before her, was one who was offering his help, expecting nothing in return. The alien woman's breath caught in her throat. For the first time in what felt like forever, she felt a spark of hope. Does she? Finally nodded, though the decision was hard. I will come with you, she said softly. But my people ... they're still out there. They need help too. I can't leave them behind. The human's face softened with understanding. We'll help them. But you need to come. With us first, you need to rest and recover. We can't do anything if we don't have you with us. The alien woman hesitated, her mind still torn between the mission she had started and the overwhelming need for safety and care. But she knew, in her heart, that there was no way she could continue her journey alone. All right, she agreed. I'll go with you. The human gave her a reassuring smile, then gestured for her to follow him to the ship. As she stood up, she felt a weight lift off her shoulders. She was still unsure of what the future held, but for the first time in a long while, she felt that maybe, just maybe, there was hope. The alien woman followed the human towards the ship, her steps slow but steady. The dust under her feet was still hot, but she barely noticed it anymore. Her mind was spinning with the kindness she had just experienced. It felt like a dream, a kind gesture, given without hesitation or price. As they reached the ship, the human signaled to the others, and a few of the crew members looked up. They didn't seem surprised to see him walking back with the alien woman. She was not the first person they had helped, and she likely wouldn't be the last. But something about her, the weariness in her eyes, the desperation that she carried, stuck. With the human once inside, the ship felt cool compared to the blistering heat outside. The interior was clean and efficient, filled with technology the alien woman had never seen before. Her people had only the most basic machines for survival. The sight of the ship's advanced systems made her feel even smaller, more fragile. Take a seat, the human said, pointing to a small bench near the wall. I'll get you something to eat. She nodded slowly and sat down, grateful for the rest. The human man disappeared into another room, leaving her to gather her thoughts. It was hard to believe she was inside a human ship, with humans around her who had shown her such unexpected kindness. She had expected them to take advantage of her, to make demands in exchange for their help, but instead, they offered their assistance freely. As she sat there, staring at the sleek metal walls of the ship, she couldn't help but wonder how she had ended up here, how a simple act of compassion had turned her life around. She had walked through endless dust storms, searching for hope, and now she had found it. But it wasn't just water or food. It was something more, something deeper. She had found kindness, something she had almost forgotten existed in the world. A few minutes later, the human man returned with a tray of food. He placed it carefully on the table in front of her. There were fruits and some kind of bread, along with a drink that smelled sweet and unfamiliar. Her stomach growled at the sight of the food, and she reached for it, but then paused. I don't know what to say, she said quietly. Her voice was softer now, the words almost like a confession. You've given me so much already. The human sat down across from her, watching her carefully. There's no need to say anything, he replied with a smile. We're just doing our job. You're here because we want to help. It's what we do. She looked down at the food, not sure where to start. The alien woman had not eaten anything like this before, but hunger soon took over, and she began eating slowly, savoring each bite. Her body was grateful for the food, but her mind was still racing with questions. Why had the human helped her so willingly? What did they want from her in return? It didn't make sense. After a few moments, she put the food down and looked up at him. Why? She asked again, her voice tinged with confusion. Why would you help me without asking for anything? My people have nothing to offer. We have nothing left. The human leaned back in his seat, his expression calm. He thought for a moment before answering her question. You've been through a lot, haven't you? He said gently. I can see it in your eyes. I've met people like you before. They've, lost everything, but that doesn't mean they're worthless. It doesn't mean they don't deserve help. She listened carefully, still unsure. But we're not like you. My people, we've always had to fight for what we need. We've traded, bargained, and fought for survival. We don't know anything else. The human nodded, understanding. Her confusion. It's not easy, I know. But there's more to life than just fighting for survival. Sometimes it's about helping each other out, even when we don't expect anything in return. That's the way we do things. She looked at him, trying to understand. It wasn't easy for her to grasp the idea that people could help without a hidden agenda, without expecting something back. For her, everything had always been a transaction. But this human, this stranger, had given her water, food, and a safe place to rest without asking for anything. Is that what you do? She asked slowly. You help everyone? The human man smiled again, a warmth in his expression that made her feel even more at ease. Not everyone, no, he said with a chuckle. But when we can, we try. It's what we believe in. Helping others, especially when they need it the most. The alien woman felt a weight lifting from her chest. She had spent so much of her life carrying the burden of survival, always trying to do whatever it took to make sure her people survived. But now, in this moment, she was beginning to see that there could be another way away, where kindness wasn't just something to be exchanged, but something to be given freely. Her thoughts were interrupted when the human spoke again. We're going to need your help. Though, he said, not just with surviving out here, but with helping your people. I can't promise everything will be easy, but we'll do our best. The alien woman looked at him, surprised. You want me to help? Of course, he replied. You know your planet, your people. You're the one who can guide us. She hesitated, thinking about the challenges ahead. But deep down, she knew that this wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about something bigger, about learning to trust again and help those in need without expecting anything in return. She took a deep breath and nodded. All right, I'll help. I'll do what I can, the human smiled, relieved. Good, let's start making a plan. As the conversation moved on, the alien woman felt a sense of calm she hadn't felt in a long time. For the first time, she wasn't just surviving. She was part of something bigger, something that could make a real difference. The alien woman sat back, letting the words of the human sink in. She had offered him nothing, yet he was ready to give her so much. It was hard to believe that someone could be so kind without expecting anything in return. Her people had always lived by a different code, one where every favor came with a price. But this human ... he was different. His kindness was genuine, and it made her question everything she had known about the universe. She had never felt this kind of warmth before. The air in the ship was cool, and the food, though simple, was comforting. She had not realized how hungry she truly was until she had a chance to eat. It felt like the first real meal in forever, and the water was the most precious gift she could have received. It was a luxury she hadn't dared hope for. As the human man continued to talk about their mission and the plans for helping her people, she listened intently, but her mind was elsewhere. She was thinking about her village, about the people who were still out there, waiting for help. She couldn't forget them, no matter how much she wanted to. They were still suffering, and she couldn't rest until she knew they were safe. The human seemed to understand her quiet discomfort. He paused and looked at her with soft eyes, as if he could read her thoughts. We'll get there, he said. Gently, one step at a time, but first you need to rest. You've been through a lot. You've carried a heavy burden, and now it's time to let us help. The alien woman felt a tightness in her chest. She wanted to believe him, but she was afraid that once the humans helped, they would leave. Or worse, that it would be too late for her people. But she couldn't voice these fears, not when he had been so kind to her. Thank you, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I don't know what to say. You've given me everything. Water, food, a safe place to rest. I didn't think anyone would help me, let alone ask for nothing in return. My people died. There's no kindness where I come from. The human gave a small smile, a warmth that seemed to light up his face. Sometimes the universe can be hard, but that doesn't mean there's no kindness left. You just have to look for it. And sometimes you find it when you least expect it. His words struck a chord within her. She had always thought kindness was a weakness, something that only led to being taken advantage of. Her people had survived by being tough, by never trusting anyone outside their own kind. But now, she was beginning to see a different way of living, one that didn't rely on suspicion and greed. You've shown me a way I never thought was possible, she said quietly. I've always believed that survival meant taking from others, but now I see that it's possible to survive without taking. I see that we can help each other instead of fighting for everything. The human looked at her, his expression thoughtful. It's not always easy, but it's worth it. The more you help others, the more you realize that you're helping yourself too. You don't have to carry the burden alone. And neither do we. The alien woman nodded slowly, her mind processing his words. She had spent so much of her life carrying the weight of survival, always worried about what was next, always thinking of how to protect herself and her people. But now, she was starting to see that there was more to life than just survival. There was a way to live that was full of connection and compassion, a way to give without expecting anything in return. Maybe ... Maybe there's still hope, she said softly. Maybe we can rebuild. Maybe we can learn to live differently. I don't know if it's possible, but I want to try. The human's smile widened, and he placed a hand on her shoulder in a reassuring gesture. You don't have to do it alone. We're in this together. And if we help each other, we can make a real difference. The alien woman felt a strange sense of peace in that moment. It was as if a weight had been lifted off her shoulders. She had always thought that survival was about fighting, about protecting herself and her people at any cost. But now she was beginning to understand that true survival wasn't about fighting alone. It was about helping others, working together, and trusting that there was goodness in the universe. The ship hummed softly around them. She realized that this human had given her something far more valuable than just water or food. He had given her hope, and for the first time in a long while, she felt like there might be a future worth living. I'll do everything I can, she said firmly. I will help you. I will guide you to my people, and we'll find a way to save them. The human nodded, his expression filled with quiet determination. We'll find a way, together. The alien woman looked out the small window of the ship, staring at the barren landscape below. It was hard to imagine that this planet, with its empty deserts and cracked earth, could ever be a place of hope. But maybe it could be. Maybe, with the help of the humans, her people could start again. Maybe, just maybe, they could build something better. For the first time in a long while, the alien woman allowed herself to believe in the possibility of a better future. And with that belief came a renewed sense of purpose. She wasn't alone anymore. She had found something worth fighting for, a chance to rebuild, a chance to help, and a chance to live in a way she had never thought possible. The days passed. Slowly aboard the human ship, and with each passing hour, the alien woman began to feel stronger. The food, the water, the rest, everything was helping her heal in ways she hadn't thought possible. Her body, weak and frail from the harsh conditions outside, was slowly returning to its old strength. But it wasn't just her body that was healing. Her mind was also shifting, opening up to new ideas, new possibilities. She had spent so many years focused on survival, on the constant struggle to find enough food and water for her people. It had become a part of who she was, a fight that never seemed to end. But now, she was beginning to understand that survival wasn't just about holding on to what little you had. It was about looking beyond your own struggles and seeing the bigger picture. The human had made her see that. His kindness, his willingness to give without expecting anything in return, had changed her. She had always thought that everything in life had a price. If you wanted something, you had to give something. But the human had shown her that sometimes The greatest gift you could give was your time, your help, and your heart. The alien woman spent her days learning about the human crew, watching how they worked together, how they shared tasks and resources. They didn't just help her. They helped each other, always working as a team. It was something her people had never known, this idea of mutual support without competition. She had always been taught that only the strongest survived, but here, in this ship, she saw that strength came from cooperation, not from being the last one standing. She spent hours talking to the human man, the one who had first helped her. He explained the ways of his people, their beliefs and their values. He told her about the humans' history, the wars they had fought, and the struggles they had faced to get where they were. But despite all of it, despite the hardships and the pain, the humans had never lost sight of their core belief, that helping others, lifting each other up, was the key to surviving. The alien woman was fascinated by their stories. She had never heard of a people who were so focused on compassion and kindness. It made her question everything she had ever known. How had her people, with all their strength and resilience, failed to see this? How had they allowed their survival to become a constant battle for resources when they could have been helping each other? As she spent more time with the humans, she began to feel a deep sense of guilt. She had always believed that survival was about hoarding what you had, about doing whatever it took to stay alive. But now, as she watched the humans work together, she realized how wrong she had been. They didn't survive by taking. They survived by giving, by working together, and by sharing what they had with others. It was a simple truth, but one she had never understood until now. One evening, as the sun set over the distant horizon of the barren planet below, the alien woman found herself sitting with the human man again. They were looking out of the small window, watching the stars flicker in the distance. The silence between them was comfortable, a quiet understanding passing between them without the need for words. Finally, the alien woman spoke, her voice low but filled with conviction. "I've been thinking about what you said," she began. "About how you help others without expecting anything in return?" The human turned to her, his expression calm but attentive. "And? I think I understand now," she said, her eyes meeting his. "I've spent my whole life believing that survival means taking, fighting, and never letting go. But now I see that it's not just about surviving. It's about living, about helping others and finding strength in each other. You humans have something that we've never had. You have compassion." The human smiled softly, a warm light in his eyes. "It's not always easy to see, but yes, we do what we can to help. It's not perfect, but it's how we try to make the world better." The alien woman nodded, a sense of peace settling over her. She had always thought that compassion was a weakness, something that could be taken advantage of. But now she saw it as a strength that allowed humans to connect with each other, to heal, and to grow stronger together. It wasn't just about surviving the harsh world they lived in. It was about making the world a better place, one small act of kindness at a time. "I want to change," she said, her voice steady. "I want to help my people, not just survive, but live. I want to show them that there's another way. Maybe we can rebuild, not just our homes, but our way of life. Maybe we can learn to help each other instead of fighting for everything we need." The human's smile widened, and he placed a hand on her shoulder in a reassuring gesture. "You're already on your way. You're learning and you're sharing those lessons with others. That's how change happens, one person at a time." The alien woman felt a renewed sense of purpose. She wasn't just a survivor anymore. She was someone who could make a difference, someone who could bring change to her people. The road ahead would be difficult, she knew that, but for the first time in her life, she felt ready for it. She had found hope, not just in the kindness of a stranger, but in the possibility of a better future. As the ship sailed through the stars, she felt a sense of peace that she had never known before. She was no longer just a wanderer searching for water and food. She was part of something bigger, a force for change, a hope for her people. And as long as she had that, she knew that anything was possible. The days were quickly passing, and The alien woman found herself becoming more and more comfortable aboard the human ship. She had never imagined that she would feel at home in a place like this, surrounded by strangers. But the kindness and care the humans showed her had begun to feel like a second chance at life. One afternoon, she found herself walking through the ship's corridors, looking out at the stars through a small window. The view was breathtaking. The stars twinkled like diamonds in the dark expanse of space. It was a sight she had never truly appreciated before. On her home planet, she had been too focused on surviving to stop and enjoy the beauty of the universe. But here on this ship, surrounded by humans, she had begun to see things differently. As she walked, she bumped into the human man again. He was carrying a small tablet, his eyes focused on the screen in front of him. When he saw her, he paused and smiled warmly, as he always did. "How are you feeling today?" he asked, his tone genuine. She paused, considering the question. "Better. Much better. I never realized how much I needed rest until now." He nodded, glancing around the ship. "I'm glad to hear that. You've been through a lot. But we're almost there. Soon, we'll reach your planet, and we'll start working on helping your people." The alien woman's heart skipped a beat at the mention of her people. She had been so focused on her own survival and healing that she hadn't thought much about the next steps. But now, with the humans' words, she was reminded of why she was here. She had come to them because she believed they could help. But in doing so, she had also discovered something new, something she hadn't expected. A sense of purpose. "I've been thinking," she said quietly, looking out at the stars, "about what you said, about helping my people." The human man raised an eyebrow. "And what did you come up with?" She turned to face him, her eyes filled with determination. "I want to help. I don't just want to survive anymore. I want to make sure my people have a chance at a better life. I want to teach them what you've shown me, how to work together, how to share, how to live without always fighting for what we need." The human smiled, clearly pleased with her words. "That's exactly what we need. And I think you can make a real difference." For a moment, the alien woman felt a surge of hope. Maybe this was her chance to change everything, not just for herself, but for her people. The thought filled her with a sense of purpose, and she knew she couldn't waste it. But then another thought crossed her mind, one that made her hesitate. How do I start?" she asked. "I don't know where to begin. My people are so different from yours. They've never known a life like this." The human man looked at her thoughtfully, then placed the tablet down on a nearby table. "I think the first step is to show them that things can be different, that there's hope. They may not believe it at first, but if you're there to guide them, they'll see it." She nodded slowly, understanding what he meant. The road ahead would be difficult, but she was willing to take it. She was ready to show her people a new way of life. The human man continued, his voice soft but full of conviction. "And when we land, we can help. We'll bring supplies, we'll help rebuild, and we'll teach your people how to work together. It'll be a long process, but we'll be there every step of the way." The alien woman's chest tightened at the thought of her people. She could already see them, weak, starving, struggling to survive. She knew it wouldn't be easy, but she also knew that it was possible. For the first time in her life, she believed that change was not only necessary, but achievable. As they stood there, looking out at the stars, a new idea began to take shape in her mind. She had never considered this possibility before, but now it seemed like the right thing to do. "I have an idea," she said, her voice steady. "When we land, I'll speak to my people. I'll tell them about the humans, about what you've taught me. I'll tell them that we don't have to fight anymore, that there is a different way to live." The human man looked at her with respect, his eyes filled with understanding. "I think that's a great idea. It might be difficult, but if you can show them the power of kindness and cooperation, they'll follow." She smiled, a feeling of confidence beginning to grow inside her. For the first time in years, she didn't feel like she was fighting alone. She had the support of the humans, and now she had a vision for a new future for her people. "I'll do my best," she said firmly. "I'll lead them. I'll help them see the truth." The human nodded. "I know you will. And we'll be right behind you, ready to help in any way we can." For a brief moment, The alien woman felt a sense of peace. She wasn't alone anymore. She had found something far more valuable than just survival. She had found hope, and with it, the power to change everything. And with the help of the humans, she knew she could do it. As the ship continued its journey through the stars, she thought about the future she would help create, one where her people could live without fear, without struggle, and without the need to fight for everything they had. A future where they could learn to live together, side by side with the humans, in a world built on kindness, trust, and cooperation. It was a future worth fighting for. The day had finally come. After weeks of travel, the human ship had arrived at the alien woman's home planet. She stood on the small observation deck, looking out at the landscape below. The once barren and lifeless desert world was now teeming with potential. She could see the villages from a distance, the small settlements scattered across the land, struggling but still holding on. Her heart pounded as the ship descended, the ground below growing larger with each passing moment. The alien woman had made her decision. She would meet her people, face them, and show them that there was another way. A way where they didn't have to fight for survival, a way where they could live in peace and harmony. The human man stood beside her, his presence steady and reassuring. He had promised to help, and now the time had come for him to keep that promise. He was ready. He believed in her, and that belief had become a source of strength for her. "Are you ready?" he asked, his voice gentle. The alien woman took a deep breath, her gaze fixed on the horizon. "I'm ready," she said, her voice full of determination. The ship landed softly on the dry ground, and the engines hummed to a stop. The crew members began to disembark, ready to begin their mission of helping the alien people. But for the alien woman, this moment was bigger than any mission. This was her chance to change the future of her people. She stepped out of the ship and looked around. The wind was still dry, and the heat of the desert world was unforgiving, but she no longer saw it with the same eyes. She had learned that it wasn't the environment that defined them, but how they chose to live in it. And now, she was ready to teach her people that lesson. As she walked toward her village, memories of the past flooded her mind. She had been born here, raised here, and had always fought for survival. But now, as she approached the familiar homes, she saw something different. She saw hope, and she saw the possibility of change. The villagers gathered as she arrived. They looked at her with curiosity, fear, and confusion. They hadn't seen her in weeks, and her sudden return was unexpected. But when they saw the human man behind her, their expressions shifted from suspicion to uncertainty. One of the older villagers, a woman with a weathered face and tired eyes, stepped forward. She was the leader of the group, someone who had seen many seasons of struggle and hardship. "What is this?" she asked, her voice wary. "What have you brought to us?" The alien woman took a step forward, her heart racing, but her voice steady. "I've brought something different. I've brought hope." The crowd murmured, unsure of what to make of her words. The human man stepped forward beside her, his presence calm and confident. "We've come to help," he said simply. "We have supplies, resources, and knowledge. We want to show you that there's another way to live, a way where you don't have to fight for everything, a way where we can all work together." The village leader eyed him suspiciously. "We don't need charity," she said sharply. "We've survived this long on our own. Why would we trust you?" The alien woman's heart clenched, but she didn't let the doubt show on her face. She had expected this response. Her people were used to surviving on their own terms. They were proud, strong, and fiercely independent. But she knew she couldn't let that pride stop them from seeing the truth. "You don't have to trust them," the alien woman said softly, her eyes meeting those of the village leader. "But trust me, I've seen how they live. I've seen what kindness and cooperation can do. I've seen the way they help each other, not for gain, but because they believe in it, and I want to bring that here. I want us to live differently." For a moment there was silence. The villagers looked at each other, their uncertainty clear. They had always fought for every drop of water, every scrap of food. The idea of helping others without expecting anything in return was foreign to them. But the alien woman's words stirred something deep within them. Maybe there was a way to change. Maybe they didn't have to keep fighting. Maybe they could finally build something better. The village leader sighed, her shoulders slumping with exhaustion. It's hard to believe, she said quietly, but maybe we don't have much to lose anymore. We've been living in fear for so long. The alien woman stepped forward, her eyes filled with compassion. We don't have to live in fear anymore, she said gently. We can work together, we can share, we can rebuild. I've seen what's possible. I've seen the change that kindness can bring, and I believe we can do it here. The village leader looked at the human man, her gaze questioning. He nodded, his expression firm but gentle. We're here to help, however we can. The alien woman turned back to the villagers. Will you join me? Will you let us help you build a new future? For a long moment the villagers stood in silence, as if weighing the possibility of change against the years of hardship they had known. But slowly, one by one, they began to nod. The change wouldn't be easy, and it would take time, but the alien woman could see that they were ready. Ready to try something new. Ready to build a future that didn't depend on fear, struggle, and isolation. As the villagers gathered around, the human crew began unloading supplies, setting up the first steps of a new way of life. The alien woman felt a surge of hope rise within her. This was just the beginning. There would be challenges ahead, no doubt, but she knew they could do it. They could build a future where kindness and cooperation were at the heart of everything they did. For the first time, the alien woman felt like her people had a chance, and that chance was built on the foundation of trust, hope, and the willingness to change, and with that, a new beginning had truly begun.